I think I figured out my memory keeping problem, and clearly doing one page of my journal once a month with photos was not the solution. Hey there, it's Elisa, but of course you can call me Ellie if that's easier to remember because of the whole channel name and everything. And a few weeks ago I had kind of a chill crash out, just feeling overwhelmed at the thought of catching up on memory keeping and creating a project for myself and feeling overwhelmed at the thought of feeling overwhelmed and just not having a good grasp on what the overwhelmed feelings were. I just knew that I had so many memories scattered across my brain and memory cards and cloud storage and photo boxes and scrapbooks and planners and journals. But what I want is to have a well-organized memory archive, some kind of system where I can easily navigate to reminisce and relive memories and even share those memories with friends and family and you guys. The last time I sat down and thought about what memory keeping means to me and what I want it to be moving forward, I decided that I would go in on a monthly basis, look through all of the memories I had collected throughout the course of the month, mostly photos and videos that I've taken on my phone and journal entries, and then kind of summarize that month on one page in my journal, not necessarily with the intention of making that page look a certain way, but mostly really just to be a way to check in with myself and make sure that I'm managing my memory keeping as the year goes on, while I also work on side projects to catch up with years past of memory keeping. I tried that for a few months. It worked-ish, but the best laid plans, I tell ya. It just wasn't really accomplishing what I was wanting it to. So then I was back at the drawing board, and I think I solved my problem with a drawing board of sorts, actually. Ta-da! Okay, so this is a little bit chaotic, but a chaotic problem requires a chaotic solution. But I think I figured out what my problem is, and the inability to identify the problem is, I think, why I was getting so freaked out last time. So I decided to sit down and do kind of like a mind map of sorts. Now, am I a mind map expert? No. Am I even sure that this qualifies as a mind map? No. But whatever it is, it worked for me. So let's jump back in time a little bit so I can show you what led to this chaotic mess and how this might actually be the most organized way that I know how to tackle my memory keeping problem. Okay. Let's do memories. We have what's in my mind. We have digital photos and also digital videos. So things I have taken on my phone or even just memory cards over the years. But then I also have physical photos. So printed photos. Oh, there's also digital thoughts. So things that would be on my notes app or just documentation over the years. Journals and diaries. Journals and diaries. There's also planners. Those are kind of a memory. Then we have scrapbooks, which aren't necessarily the same as physical photos because there's a whole other component there. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to organize. All of this stuff that I have, I'm trying to figure out how to organize and archive it as best I can. There's a lot of stuff in each aspect of this that I want to share with friends and family, but how do I do that? Okay. What are the different ways of memory keeping that I'm managing for this? So we have memory keeping. So I guess some of this already is memory keeping, right? So let's call this /sharing. I technically can share most of these except for what's actually in my head, but I guess some actions that I can take to get to share this information would be the scrapbook, planners as well, to some extent. Now, I do like the idea of having photos for memory keeping. I have so many like physical photographs that I don't know how I want to store them, whether it just be as an actual photograph or in a frame or in a photo book or a photo album or a scrapbook, or even in like a memory keeping planner. Since I've started this channel, I also have vlogs and just videos in general. I originally started this channel as a way to share my memory keeping process, but it's kind of turned into an archive like in its own right. And so this is where I can pull in some of the more digital stuff. But this now looks like the mess that is inside my brain. So what do I do with this information? How do I keep this organized? I also need to figure out what I'm doing as far as sharing this information, because not all the memories that I keep for myself are things that actually need to be shared with family and friends. So I do have memories just for myself, but then there's also memories that I'm willing to share with family and friends, and also with you guys. So where do we go from here? Okay, so I think this is where I was getting caught up earlier. What do I do to make this feel more manageable? After getting everything down on paper, I'm starting to recognize an order to things, or kind of like a timeline of the memory keeping process. I think this is what I've been trying to get to, because I think where I'm getting anxious is that this doesn't have enough order for me. So what does a timeline look like here? There's the point at which I actually make the memories. So when I make memories in the moment, then we have the point of actually memory keeping or doing something with those memories. And then after that, making sure that it's shareable. And not just like random photo dumps, but like an organized type of situation. I really like the word archive. That's been kind of like sticking with me lately. Something else to note too, this isn't going to work unless I do some planning ahead of time, because in order to do the memory keeping after the memories happen, I have to be actively capturing memories in a way that can be like memory kept and shared later. And I enjoy doing that. I think that's the thing. You might be looking at this thinking, hey, this is way overcomplicated. And it is, but it's complicated because that's the way I've made it, because this is what I like to do. This is my brain default mode. Minerva, you could not be any more in the way right now. I think this is working too well for my brain, because now I'm in like thinking mode. Because not only is this like my brain, my hobby, my passion, this is what I want Ellie Planit to look like. Or I want Ellie Planit to be this part of my brain. And I feel like I've done a fairly decent job, but I think I need to do a better job at making sure that this is what Ellie Planit is at the core. Planning ahead and memory keeping. Okay, so now that we have the plan, I know what my memory keeping process / timeline needs to look like. What does that mean for Ellie Planit? So for this, I'm gonna bring in my official color coding key, or like my official color coding tools for this year. So getting a little meta behind the scenes here, but I've been workshopping some content pillars, which sounds like disgustingly tech bro influencer speak, but whatever. So for Ellie Planit, I think my content pillars are kind of the main areas of focus for me: planning, memories, and then an archive for those memories. And then I'll always have that content that just kind of falls under the miscellaneous category. And this kind of lines up pretty well with this. This is what I've been working on behind the scenes, and this is what my brain just did, trying to work through just general problem solving. And maybe there's some... Where did you even come from, Minerva? All right, so we're back to the present day. So this is where we're kind of at right now. Now, obviously, I'm going to be making memories throughout my life. And because I'm me, I'm going to continue memory keeping those memories after the fact, and planning for that memory keeping ahead of time, and then sharing that memory keeping once I'm done, which isn't really new information, but it does feel better like in my brain to be able to put that into words on paper, and let's be honest, to color code my way through it. Color organization just soothes my brain. Maybe that's what I've needed this whole time. I just needed to color organize what was going on in my brain. Now, what does that mean for the memory keeping process moving forward? I think where I went wrong with the monthly journal situation, I think I was just spending too much time on the journals/diary portion of the memories, but there's a whole rest of this stuff going on to worry about. So I think to do actual like memory keeping, I really need to focus on putting my energy into building an archive that is going to be like the final resting place for my memories. Not just a little journal page that I'm going to never look at ever again, but actually well organized and documented memory keeping that is worth keeping for my memories. I do still like the idea of kind of sticking to one book per year kind of scenario, whether that book be a scrapbook or a photo book or a memory keeping planner or kind of a combination of all of those things. Okay, see, now I want to do another mind map. Oh no, I'm causing more problems instead of solving them again. Because I think what I did here was get myself to the point where I could understand the problem enough to ask, how am I going to solve it? And that's where I was getting stuck before. I was just getting so overwhelmed and like overstimulated by my own thoughts, I guess, that I just couldn't focus into being like, this is what I need to solve. But now that we've asked the question, now I need to work on a resolution. All right, we're back here again. I think we figured out what the memories are and what the memory keeping is. I don't think we've solved the problem of what my final archive actually needs to look like. Because part of what's been going on, I wrote out these different like memories as if they were already complete things that I already have, which is kind of true, but not completely. But part of the breakdown is the fact that what's actually happening in the moment is the digital photos and the digital videos, and then like my memories and my own brain. And then for bigger events like planner conferences and concerts and stuff like that, I do also kind of do the digital thoughts and like notes on my phone in real time as well, planning ahead for the memory keeping after the fact. And then I guess I do this too, even throughout the day. But all this to say that this group of stuff is what's happening in real time-ish, give or take. And then I'm usually pretty good at following up with documenting things in my journal pretty soon after stuff happens, like after the memories happened in the moment. I'll usually record them, at least in my journal, if nowhere else, which used to be my functional planner. But my memory keeping planners, and then things like scrapbooks or printing out photos after the fact, those I do not get to for a very, very long time, if ever. Okay, well, I guess you're just gonna hang out there now. I keep getting stuck at this part of the process, getting my memories to actual memory keeping, other than just like journals and stuff, but like good shareable memory keeping. So I'm kind of getting stuck in like this funnel situation where it's bottlenecking at the memory keeping process. And so I'm really not getting to that actual archive that I want everything to eventually land in. Sorry, I know I'm like jumping all over the place. I really wanted to make a cute little video about my memory keeping process, but at this point now we're just on this ride, mostly just for me and my cat. Sorry. Minnie, you gotta behave or I'm kicking you out. Okay, so I keep saying archive, but now I need to figure out what does that actually mean. So, new mind map. So we have the archive of my life, more specifically, the memories that I'm memory keeping. What do I want this to look like when I'm done? My journals should be included in the archive. It's really going to be just for me. My diaries and journals are mostly just like my private thoughts, but that's okay, because if we're considering the archive to be my like share subject stuff, I am including things that I'm keeping just for myself in there. So I think that's going to partially be journals and diaries. We also have my planners, which have served various functions over the years. So both my journals and my planners have been used functionally as well as memory keeping. That is not what an M looks like, but that's okay. Keeping. And so I would say that the functional stuff leans more into what I'm keeping for myself, but like the memory keeping stuff or those memory keeping pages or like those rewind plan with me spreads, those are more things that I like to share like with you guys or with friends and family, and to kind of go through actual photos that I can share. So I guess this is the stuff that I already have, or that I'm already doing without doing like any extra work for the sake of like, ooh, I have to build this archive. It's just stuff that I'm naturally already doing. But then there's the stuff that I want to add to the memory keeping process / archive. Okay, now we're getting somewhere because I'm trying to get all of this into this through this weird funnel timeline thing. Now, because my journals and planners and stuff are going to be more for me, I don't really care what they look like at the end of the day. I'm more worried about what they contain, and that's just part of my daily living. I don't really have to do too much to manage this stuff. This is already happening. Now, we have these digital photos and digital videos. How do I want this kept in my archive? And what do I want that to look like in relation to things like what I post online with like vlogs and videos, and more of that physical, tangible stuff like printed photos, eventually going into like scrapbooks or photo books? Do I want to keep doing things like memory keeping planners, or more of like the scrapbooky pages in my functional planners and journals? Part of the problem is that I do already have some printed photos and some scrapbooks. Some of them are finished, some of them are not, and some memory keeping planners, a lot of which are not actually finished or kind of split up in weird ways, and some pages aren't where they need to be. Let me add that as its own thing, because the planners that I'm filling out in the moment as I'm making the memories is not the same thing as a memory keeping planner or my planner pages. I'll try to remember to link some examples of what I'm talking about here down below when I'm talking about like memory keeping planner pages, which can eventually be stored in my planners, but it's not part of the in the moment planning process, which is different than my planning process. You see why I'm getting so like, let me indulge myself here and not judge too harshly. I have always had like a big question mark on what to do as far as physical photos go, because I do really like the idea of having something physical for memory keeping and not just digital storage, because it might just be my OCD catastrophizing brain, but I'm just like, what if every single digital file that I've ever kept corrupts and then there goes all of my memories forever because I can't trust my own brain to keep track of them? And I think there is something really satisfying about looking through actual physical photos, seeing the actual physical notes that you know were written at a specific point in time. But what do I want to do with those photos? Do I want to keep them as just photographs in like a photo box? Do I want to put them into scrapbooks? That's kind of my ideal plan, but clearly I'm not good at getting to that sort of thing. So that's just going to keep falling behind probably for the rest of my life. Plus, scrapbooks can get really big and heavy. And so I do like the idea of doing a scrapbook for certain things, like certain subjects or events. But if I were to scrapbook my entire life with all of the pictures that I want to have actual physical photos of, that's going to be like 200 pounds worth of paper and photos. And I just don't think I want to deal with that. So maybe just like photo boxes are what I should go for? I'll have to think about that. Do I have to answer this question right now? No, but also yes, because I want to get this done, because I want to know at least a direction to move forward. So I think for the sake of my forever archive, we're gonna put a pin in the scrapbook idea. I just have too many other layers of memory keeping and this whole like funnel situation to worry about this for now. And if I establish a smooth workflow through this funnel, see, now I'm starting to sound corporate again, but if I build this into a more smooth working habit, it'll lead to a process that will help me make scrapbooks later, because everything else will be in order, and it'll be easier for me to kind of go through photos and memories and all that kind of stuff and work on scrapbooks whenever the need arises. So scrapbooks, not fully off the table. We're putting a pin in that for later, something to think of later down the road. They won't be part of the building blocks of my archive, just like a nice little garnish that can be sprinkled in as time allows, you know? So we're gonna put scrap books, or even photo books, like those like digital type scrapbooks. This is a future fun little project, not a necessity, not necessarily a goal. I think my primary goal right now is going to be just the photographs. I'll figure out what I want that like photo book situation to look like later. I need to decide on what that looks like, but that is going to be like the goal. And these are things that I can look through just by myself and also with friends and family. But I don't want to leave you guys out of this. I do like the idea of having a digital archive as well as these other more physical components. Because like I said, while I started this channel to be more of a way for me to share my memory keeping process, it's really turned into kind of a memory keeping system in and of itself. And so I do want to consider it as part of my archive, especially because there are some things like videos that just can never actually be turned into like a scrapbook or go into a photo box. And one thing that I appreciate about an edited YouTube video is that I can add my own narrative after the fact and kind of fill in the blanks for when I didn't actually capture a photo, or to reflect in a certain way that was only possible after the fact. So let's add Ellie Planit here, while in turn Ellie Planit is built on the content pillar of my archive as well. So it kind of works in both directions. Or maybe it doesn't, and I've just had too much coffee too late in the evening and I've gone so far off the rails, there's no hope on me making any sense at this point. I don't know. You tell me. This looks good. This is it. I'm not even joking. I just had the biggest, like, something clicked in my brain, light bulb went off, huge wave of just like feeling settled. This is my answer, but I'm gonna make things just a little bit more messy here. I think for the long term, my primary priority when someone is just like, you keep saying archive, what do you mean? I think I want it to be this stuff right here. I want a physical aspect to my archive and a digital aspect to my archive. Although I guess I can't forget about my existing journals and planners, especially the functional stuff, because this is what I'm already doing. This is my daily life, and I'm not going to stop using my planners and journals on a daily basis. And they are kind of the mortar to my whole archive process. They're the context that seeps into like everything else. Those memory keeping pages that I already have kind of fall more in line with the whole scrapbook situation. So I kind of consider this to be more of an outlier to my archive that I don't really want to be my primary goal. At least not as far as the actual pages, or maybe, I don't know. Here, okay. Here's where I'm really getting stuck. Part of me is thinking, don't worry too much about memory keeping pages until we get into like the scrapbooking era of my archive memory keeping process. The problem is I already have memory keeping planners that are just like laying around from previous years, and so many of them are unfinished, and I've really been wanting to go back through and actually finish those planners, because the fact that they're not done is literally hanging over my head every single day. It does give me the opportunity to reflect on my memories throughout the year, because that's really the goal, right? This archive allows me to reminisce on what I want, when I want, and have quick access to these memories, because I can't use my own brain for that because I forget everything. But I think I just need to change. I need to change what memory keeping pages look like for me. So they're not quite at the same level as scrapbooks that I want to do way at the very end. Don't even worry about it right now. We're covering that up. This is going to be more of like a transitional type of situation between my initial archive and archive 2.0. And you know what? We're not even going to call the scrapbooks part of the archive. That is going to be a hobby. We're not even worrying about that right now. Ooh, this is inky. I haven't used this in so long. I thought this would have been dried out. This is like the opposite problem. What is going on? Okay, so I think I need to move some of this memory keeping also into what I'm going to be working on. I already have some of the memory keeping done as previous memory keeping pages, memory keeping planners, but I want to continue doing that. It might look a little bit different now. Okay, we're not using this anymore. This needs to calm down. So we're going to call this existing memory keeping pages, and then there's going to be new memory keeping pages. So this future scrapbook thing, not even worrying about it, but like individual scrapbooking style pages as memory keeping, I think I want to get back into that so that I can finish some of my existing memory keeping planners, also as a way to express memory keeping of certain points in my life or certain events for my Ellie Planit YouTube channel. As far as sharing my archive goes, kind of jumping back into this corner here, I think everything listed here is going to have various degrees of shareability, I guess. For any of the photographs, if they're being used in my memory keeping pages, I'll share that with you. I really don't share too much of what I'm adding to my planners and journals functionally, but I do like sharing the setup of my journals and planners with you. Okay, I think I've gotten that out of my system. Sorry for that tangent, although this whole video has been a tangent. This has just been not what I was expecting this to turn into. Okay, but just to kind of clean up the timeline, funnel, pipeline. Ooh, geez, that went all over the place. Wow. Okay, well, we'll use this paper anyway. In summary, this is what we're looking at. This is my official memory keeping timeline. First, we have planning. This is where it all begins. And not just planning plans, but specifically planning for memory keeping. So kind of both, either or. It's all part of the planning for the memory keeping process, but also the plans for the memories themselves. You know what I mean? Then we have what's actually happening in the moment, recording what is happening. Then we have kind of the reflections on those memories, or like the memory keeping, which expresses my memories in a way that I can share, and then also archive for future sharing and reflections. Does that make any sense at all? I don't know. You know, the problem with me, I actually feel so much less confused now. This is what my life is like every day. Just my brain, I'm either too depressed to move, or my brain is just rocket ship hyper fixated on a tangent, making things way more complicated than they should have to be in order to satisfy whatever obsessive thought loop is just wreaking havoc on my brain at that moment. But I feel better. I don't know about you. So, my memory keeping plan. The concept of memory keeping seems like something that my brain likes. Memory keeping good. But is memory keeping a verb? Is it a noun? Does it mean a tangible thing I can hold? So I think to help make my brain make sense of it better, I want to try to think of memory keeping specifically as a verb. The Ellie Planit dictionary definition of memory keeping is a verb. The act of capturing memories and tending to those memories and guiding memories through the process of being remembered and expressed and reflected on later. It is the process. See, but now it's starting to sound like a noun again. But memory keeping is the process. And then I keep using this word archive, which can also be a noun or a verb. My eventual goal is to have an archive of my life as a result of memory keeping through the memories of my life. So archive, capital A archive, is the collection of memories. So memory keeping, the process, archive, the collection. Is that something that needed to be specified? Probably not to anybody else, but my brain feels like it can at least relax its grip on the panic button that has been in the back of my subconscious whenever I think about memory keeping and planning and this channel and my brand and my hobbies. Why is this such a big deal? It's because it's what I do. Is it normal? Is it healthy? I don't know. This video is probably going to be something that I need to share with like a therapist or a psychiatrist at some point for some kind of diagnosis in the future, which there's nothing wrong with. Destigmatize neurospiciness and I don't know, whatever is going on in my brain. But I guess now that all that's figured out, I guess now it's just time to get to it. We'll see how this goes.